After 6 months of blood, sweat, and tears for my book launch, my kids chose a spa day. What happened next will leave you speechless. Mara could hardly breathe as she stared at the email on her laptop screen. 6 months of burning the midnight oil, staring down countless rejections, and pouring her soul onto the page. The launch of her book, Her Dream, was just days away. It was supposed to be exhilarating the day she finally held her hard work in her hands. But as she fidgeted with her pen, a knot tightened in her stomach, the weight of expectation pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. She imagined the crowd at her launch party, friends and family gathered to celebrate, mingling around the table she had stocked with snacks and drinks. But now instead, her children had planned a surprise spa day for her. "It's just a day to relax, Mom," her 10-year-old daughter had said with too much enthusiasm. The thought had felt like a punch to the gut. Was that what they thought she needed? Soothing bubble baths while her dreams gathered dust? A warm surge of anger mixed with guilt flushed through her as the disparity between their world and hers sank in. Mara's fingers trembled as she typed. The dual life of loving mother and aspiring author felt like a seesaw, tilting dangerously. Each time she thought she had struck the right balance, she felt betrayed by her own life. How was she going to find acceptance among her children when they couldn't even see the struggle fueling her night and day typing sessions? Bitterness clung to her like smoke, but she washed it over with the love that coursed through her veins. She would never let them see how truly crushed she felt. The conflict in her chest grew heavier. Was she selfish for pursuing this dream so diligently? What if she was chasing something that didn't matter to them? As the thoughts spiraled, she clutched her cup of coffee, only finding the black liquid turning bitter on her tongue. The more she sipped, the more hollow she felt. Shouldn't life be about creating memories, not just words written down for others? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet uncertainty gripped her even tighter, much like the way a vice would. She felt a surge of anguish build with the fear that pursuing her ambitions meant sacrificing what made her a mother. An intuition whispered that breaking the connection was as easy as separating the pages of her book. Yet the love for her children held her firm like cement. Lost in these fleeting thoughts, Mara slumped against the wall, suddenly aware that the festivity of her book launch was becoming overshadowed by internal discord. An unexpected ping from her publisher jolted her from her spiraling introspection. She glanced at her screen, eyes wild and wide. The scrolling message beckoned for her immediate attention. With her children's laughter echoing in the background, her heart raced against an overwhelming need for resolution. Every component in her life seemed to clash, and she stood at the intersection between devotion to her children and the relentless fire for her dream. What now? How could she keep them together without breaking apart? The screen pulsed as she hesitated, contemplating if indeed it was possible to contain both dreams. The email's text was short but weighty. "We need to talk about your book launch. Urgent matters have arisen." A sense of dread washed over her as she read it again, the implications swirling like a storm cloud overhead. Who knew what pitfalls lay ahead? She felt her stomach churn as she pictured the possibilities: the publisher pulling back support, potential logistical disasters, or worse yet, lukewarm reception. The potential for failure loomed ominously. With a decisive breath, Mara pushed her laptop away, frustrated by its coldness. No matter how hard she tried, fear of disappointment gnawed at her insides, even more damaging than the doubts that her children had voiced. Each click of the keys had represented countless hours spent crafting her narrative. The characters whispered to her, alive in her mind, yet now they felt like shadows of what could have been. Moments that should fill her with pride only inflamed her inner chaos. The laughter of her children echoed through the house, a reminder of the joy she yearned to be fully part of. The thought tugged at her heartstrings, a juxtaposition of duty against aspiration. She didn't want to venture into the launch loom purely in pursuit of personal ambition. She desired to demonstrate perseverance, to become a symbol of unyielding aspiration to her children. Mara rose from her desk, compelled to break the mental loop consuming her. She wandered to the living room, the vibrant chaos of toys scattered across the floor a stark reminder of her life. She looked at her kids, a wave of emotion threatening to flood over her. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked, her heart pounding. They looked up, wide-eyed and innocent, their carefree laughter dissolving into an inquisitive silence. This was her moment, not filled with shares of secrets or the burden of truth. It was a shared opportunity to connect. Inhaling deeply, she chose her words with care. "I've been working very hard on something special, my book." The words struck her tongue with an unexpected richness, as if they were finally being articulated in their rightful context. "I want you both to understand how important this is to me, not just for me but for us as a family." Her daughter's brow furrowed, confusion mingling with compassion. "But Mom, we just want you to be happy. You're always working." "But working is part of my happiness," Mara countered, feeling an unfamiliar steadiness blossom within her. "And I want you to see that chasing dreams is okay. It's something I never fully saw when I was younger." The revelation was raw and unfiltered, yet undoubtedly liberating. It marked a shift in her perspective, a duality that could exist without sacrificing either side. Each child nodded slowly, absorbing her confession. As the conversation unfolded, an unexpected clarity emerged. She would not merely float between the two roles, she would embrace them both fiercely. They would witness her struggles, her determination, and learn the importance of pursuing one's ambitions while nurturing relationships. With a newfound sense of agency, she returned to her laptop. The email from her publisher still waited, albeit now couched in a refreshed context, an opportunity rather than a threat. She would face it head-on, as she would once the clock struck down to launch day. As her fingers flew over the keyboard, Mara vowed not to let her dual identities divide her, but instead to enrich the lives of those around her. Later that night, as the children drifted off to sleep, she contemplated the email once more. The challenge lay ahead, and although she felt the familiar knot of trepidation, her resolve fortified. She was ready to embrace whatever awaited her. Tomorrow, she decided, she would meet that uncertainty with the same passion she poured into her pages. But first, she noticed the calendar. An alert popped up, signaling an unexpected event around the corner on social media. What change could that herald for the destiny of her book? The next morning greeted Mara with a bright sun filtering through the kitchen window, illuminating the scattered crumbs from the kids' breakfast. She looked at the calendar again. Today was the day, an online gathering that could skyrocket her book's visibility. The surge of anticipation clashed with the gentle murmur of doubt that always seemed to linger. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, the steam curled towards the ceiling, mirroring her racing thoughts. She couldn't shake the uncertainty about what would happen during this online event. Would anyone care? Would her ideas resonate? This launch, the culmination of years of effort, hinged on today's outcomes. She realized she had to step out of her mind and into action. Mara grabbed her laptop and settled in at the kitchen table, the remnants of family life surrounding her. The children's drawings, vibrant and chaotic, provided a comforting backdrop. They reminded her of why she had embarked on this journey in the first place. This thought alone fueled her resolve as she opened her social media accounts, her heart racing at the sight of notifications and messages trickling in. Engagement was immediate, as if her circle had held its breath in anticipation. Comments flowed in, some supportive, others less so. One message read, "I hope it doesn't just end up being another cancer story." The edge of criticism cut deeper than she expected. Who had this person assumed she was? Just another voice drowning in the noise. Questioning herself, she grappled with the urge to respond defensively but paused. Silence fell, and she felt her fingers hover over the keys. What was her intent? Was her aim to prove herself right or to allow the dialogue to evolve? Instead of replying angrily, she drafted a thoughtful acknowledgement, embracing openness. She decided that her narrative was worth discussing, not just defending. As she hit send, a sense of empowerment surged within her. She was not here to acquiesce or validate preconceived notions. She was here to challenge and inspire. The gathering commenced, her heart thrumming with the cadence of increasing anticipation as her allotted time approached. Comments populated live feeds like stars flickering on a restless canvas. This was more than mere promotion, it was communion. Voice quivering slightly, she shared her experiences, the struggles, the mental shifts, and the ultimate desire to show her children that dreams could blossom under even the most challenging circumstances. After she finished speaking, Mara observed a peculiar pause, an almost tangible stillness. She had expected applause but instead felt the weight of scrutiny. People began to question her narrative. "You seem nervous. Why push through, knowing the stakes may not be worth the risk?" Those words struck like a hammer against her self-perception. Why had she embarked on this endeavor? The answer erupted from deep within: the need for authenticity, for growth. "Every story has a chance to create a ripple," she articulated, voice steadier than she felt. "I choose to risk criticism to inspire at least one person to chase their dream." Responses began to flood in, some thanking her for the honesty and others sharing their own dreams and fears. As the online gathering wrapped up, the lingering sense of disquiet returned, even though she knew she had felt greatly supported. The potential impacts of her words swirled through her mind. She realized this moment was no mere launch, it was a reckoning of sorts. Navigating her roles as an author and a mother had never seemed so intertwined. Tonight she would gather her children, share what had transpired, and invite their thoughts, hoping they'd absorb the lessons that were shaping not just her career, but their perspectives on ambition and resilience. Later that evening, she noticed a peculiar email classed among her notifications, its subject line teasing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could alter everything. She hesitated, her finger hovering above the mouse. Would she dare open it? Mara's heart raced as she pressed the mouse, the screen illuminating with an invitation to apply for a prominent writing workshop led by a renowned author. This moment felt monumental, like staring down a fork in the road, both paths cloaked in uncertainty. The workshop promised not just mentorship, but a platform that could amplify her voice beyond the realm of her immediate audience. Yet, the thought of diving into the deep end again paralyzed her momentarily. Was she truly ready to invest her energy into another venture? The familiar pang of self-doubt gnawed at her. She recalled the weight of the scrutiny she faced during the online gathering. Had she navigated those fragile waters only to mask her insecurities? Taking a deep breath, she considered her intentions. The thought of stepping into a nurturing environment where others shared her struggles was appealing. She envisioned a safe zone with the guidance of an individual who had traversed similar paths, someone who had embraced hardship as fuel for greatness. With newfound resolve, Mara began drafting her application. She poured her heart into each word: her journey, the fears she faced, the ways her story was interlaced with her children's aspirations, and how they inspired her to stand firm against the tempest of criticism. This was more than just a chance to enhance her writing skills. It was an opportunity to demonstrate grit and tenacity not only to herself but to the very children that had unknowingly prompted her leap into the writing world. As she clicked submit, a rush of hope mingled with anxiety coursed through her veins. She was moving beyond mere reflection. She was crafting her destiny. But what lay ahead? The waiting felt lengthy, like holding one's breath beneath the surface of a pool, unsure if the moment to exhale would come soon. That evening, her children were boys of wonder and whimsy. As they painted with vibrant colors, feigning to orchestrate their own intricate stories, Mara felt enveloped in their creativity. They were spontaneous, unshackled by fears of judgment. It struck her that their merit lay in simply being. She considered sharing the day's events with them, unsure how to convey the gravity of her choices. But all that was needed was authenticity. "Do you know what I did today?" she began, trying to capture their attention amidst laughter. "I wrote a letter asking to learn from someone who inspires me." Their eyes glimmered, filled with curiosity. "Why would you need to ask someone else?" her eldest queried, tilting his head slightly as if grasping at a quiet truth. "You already tell stories." That simple question set off fireworks in Mara's mind. In their eyes she was already a storyteller. Perhaps the artistry lay not in merely honing technical skills, but embracing her own narrative's raw edges. "Maybe," she replied slowly, "but there's always something new to learn. Even the best writers find ways to grow." They continued painting as Mara watched, their enthusiasm lighting her resolve. She realized she was modeling the exact resilience she longed to instill in them. Failure was part of the tapestry of growth. The act of pushing through discomfort was invaluable. That night, as Mara tucked her boys in, she reflected on her own fears, recognizing they would always ebb and flow but could be sources of strength, not shackles. She wondered about the feedback she would likely receive from the workshop. Her thoughts spiraled back to the email, the permanence of waiting, and the possibility of acceptance, briefly intertwining hope and self-doubt again. Would she achieve a breakthrough that might carry her story farther than she had ever dreamed? The next morning brought not just sunlight but an email notification. Mara's heart thudded, a mix of anticipation and despair brimming as she clicked open the message. Would this lead her to the growth she craved? Or another confrontation with her limitations? Mara's breath quickened as she began to read. The stakes had never felt higher. Could this really be the turning point she needed, or would it reveal more? Crashing waves of self-discovery? Mara stared at the screen, her mind racing as she processed the words unfolding before her. The email contained the welcome news she had yearned for. She was accepted into the workshop. A wave of elation crashed over her, but as quickly as it came, a question intruded. Was she prepared for the intensity that awaited her? The initial thrill converged with a jarring apprehension. This workshop was not merely a gathering of writers. It promised critiques, challenges, and potentially revelations that might shake her understanding of her craft and herself. She imagined the seasoned author scrutinizing her work, as well as the other writers, who were undoubtedly equally driven and talented. Would her voice measure up in that demanding setting, or would she shrink back into silence once more? Days spiraled into each other as her mind filled with preparations for the workshop. Every free moment was consumed by questioning her capabilities. She pored over her past works, seeking out hidden strengths but finding themselves clouded by self-criticism. The days dwindled until the workshop loomed like an impending storm. Mara clung to her children's innocent perception of her as a storyteller. Would they still see her as that vibrant figure, full of wisdom and courage, if they caught wind of her faltering confidence? The pressure was mounting, and what was meant to be a nurturing environment now felt daunting. On the night before the first session, she laid restless in bed, countless what-ifs chasing each other through her mind. Suddenly, her thoughts grounded in the boys' laughter from earlier that day. Engaging in their imaginative play reminded her of the freedom inherent in creativity, the same freedom she had momentarily forgotten. In a moment of resolve, she took out her notepad and jotted down the reasons she had pursued writing in the first place. The passion that ignited her journey became clearer than the shadows of doubt hung over her. She was not there to showcase perfection, but to uncover growth. The realization that she could falter and still thrive washed over her like a cleansing rain. Arriving at the workshop the next day, she walked into a room infused with anticipation and energy. Writers of all backgrounds filled the space, their words a fluttering tapestry that promised warmth and connection. As she took her seat, nerves tightened in her stomach. The workshop leader, a seasoned author with a reputation for nurturing talent, walked in and immediately set a tone of camaraderie, exuding approachability. She spoke of her own struggles, the failures, and the peeling back of layers necessary for authentic storytelling. The stories she shared resonated deeply within Mara, leading her to understand that struggle was not a hurdle, but a catalyst for genuine expression. As they delved into their first exercise, Mara felt an old fear creep back. The leader had instructed everyone to read aloud their work, dissecting it collectively, but she had not been prepared for such vulnerability so quickly. Yet, with each reading, every writer stretched beyond their comfort zones, revealing layers of raw emotions that not only heightened her appreciation of others, but also beckoned her to step up. Finally, it was her turn. The sound of her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she stood, gripping her page tightly. But when she began to read, she noticed the faces turned toward her were kind, eager, and encouraging, not scrutinizing. They were all fellow travelers on a journey of growth. The energy in the room shifted. She was welcomed into their struggles. With each word spoken aloud, Mara began to breathe. She could feel the hesitant edges soften, empathizing with the collective strength found within vulnerability. For the first time, she recognized that whatever lay ahead, feedback or critique, was merely an opportunity for her to evolve. As the first day concluded, and the group exchanged stories and reflections, Mara felt fortified. She realized that mentorship was not solely about knowledge. It was equally about connection and empathy. But as they all departed, another thought nudged her mind. Would she really be able to integrate this newfound growth into her life beyond the workshop? Questions lingered as she left, but the most pressing one remained. How would she bring this experience into her daily writing practice, and what challenges awaited her in the sessions to come? Mara awoke to the sun streaming through her bedroom window, the warmth of its rays almost deceptive in their comfort. The initial excitement from the previous day simmered down into a gentle reminder of what lay ahead. Today was day 2 of the workshop, and the notion of tackling the assignments from yesterday buzzed in her mind like a persistent bee. She sat at her kitchen table with her notebook, flipping through her initial ideas and notes. But something had shifted. Instead of being paralyzed by perfectionism and doubt, she now felt a flicker of determination. Her reflections from the first day gave her an ironic sort of confidence. She was not alone in this journey, and that realization wasn't just comfort. It served as a call to action. The other writers, each grappling with their vulnerabilities, emboldened her to explore her own. However, the heaviness of her self-doubt still lingered like a stubborn shadow. She resisted the urge to rewrite lines she had just penned, reminding herself that experimenting was part of the process. Mara decided to focus on what she could bring to the table in this workshop, her unique voice molded by her experiences, even the challenging ones. Perhaps the key wasn't imperfection but authenticity. As she arrived, the workshop leader greeted everyone enthusiastically, her energy infectious. Today's task was to write in the voice of a character they had never previously explored. In an instant, Mara's mind raced with possibilities. A more ambitious side of her sparked curiosity. What if she twisted her narratives into unexpected directions? A character based on her fears of inadequacy might yield enriching discoveries. The group settled into their writing corners, and the air thickened with concentration. Mara scribbled furiously, her pen gliding over the paper. Characters poured forth like tributaries from her subconscious, each carrying different facets of her insecurities: fear, ambition, love, frustration, and lurking beneath it all, the relentless pursuit of validation. With her pen connecting the dots of her many selves, she experienced an exhilarating rush, almost forgetting about the outside world. Once the writing period concluded, the group reconvened to share their creations. Despite her heart racing, Mara recognized the same flicker of nervousness among her peers. One by one they read aloud. Each voice held a truth that resonated. Their narratives danced between the shadows and light of life's complexities. When it was her turn, Mara felt bolstered by the authenticity rolling off her colleagues. The words flowed with surprising fluidity, each sentence unveiling layers of a deeper self she couldn't quite fathom until now. She read about a character in a small town who shied away from the spotlight, grappling with hidden talent but paralyzed by the fear of judgment. The audience's faces reflected understanding this was not just fiction, it was a confessional. Afterward, critiques filled the room. Instead of the fear she initially expected, Mara found joy in the feedback. It wasn't merely criticism. It was encouragement masked in constructive insights. The notion of recalibrating one's work to highlight strength instead of flaws felt like a revelation. Each suggestion led her closer to possibilities she had previously overlooked. Yet, just as she felt exhilarated by her progress, another troubling question nudged at her thoughts. How would she confront the very real challenges that awaited her once the workshop concluded? She could feel her improvements stirring a longing to integrate her experiences into her life. But how would she sustain this momentum amidst daily responsibilities and the noise of doubts? Leaving the workshop that day, Mara's mind buzzed with anticipation mixed with trepidation. She was starting to feel empowered, but echoes of her insecurities still lurked, ready to strike when her guard was down. The realization that the battle was far from over loomed large, but within the maelstrom of her thoughts, another question formed. What if embracing vulnerability became her greatest strength? How could she craft stories that reflected not only her potential, but also her journey of self-acceptance? Determined to find answers, Mara made a resolution to channel her insights into her writing practice beyond the safe confines of the workshop, a commitment that promised to test her in ways she had yet to imagine. Every morning had begun the same for the past week, her alarm blaring at dawn, the sound cutting through the warm cocoon of her blankets. Yet today felt different. As Mara sipped her coffee, she was acutely aware of the purpose that draped over her. The urgency to reshape her life and writing from mere expressions of her experiences to something uniquely transformative. The workshop had ignited something dormant within her. Ideas churned restlessly, longing for a canvas. She flipped through her notebook, the pages filled with untamed lines and raw sketches of characters. This chaos of words once intimidated her. Yet now it felt like the unmistakable outline of a novel waiting to be born. She recognized this was a critical moment, a decision to embrace both the messiness and the beauty of creation. Mara knew she had to push through the trepidation. It wasn't just about showing progress in the workshop anymore. It was about continuing the work on her own, in the hustle and bustle of daily life. What had seemed like a fleeting flicker of inspiration was now a powerful flame. She could not let it extinguish that afternoon. She carved out a dedicated space in her cluttered living room. Books sprawled around her like faithful companions, each one echoing stories of struggle and triumph. At her makeshift desk, a pile of old magazines stacked under her laptop, she felt both exhilarated and nauseous, racing thoughts quickening her pulse. What would she write? The well of inspiration swirled within her, pulling her in conflicting directions, but an image emerged. A protagonist not unlike herself, confronted not only by external challenges but wrestling with the question of her worth. As she typed, Mara allowed herself to bypass the initial self-scrutiny that typically slowed her down. The words flowed, leading her into uncharted territory. An antagonist formed in her mind, a character reminiscent of the critics from her past who had tried to suffocate her voice. Would this character challenge her protagonist's journey? Would their battles expose her inner contradictions, the self-judgment that shackled her creativity? She could almost feel the tension in the air as her fingers raced over the keyboard. Each click punctuated the fight between who she was and who she aspired to be. With every line, Mara carved a path of authenticity. She uncovered strengths that had previously slipped through her fingers: courage, resilience, a profound desire for connection. This wasn't just writing. It was a physical manifestation of her evolution, each sentence sculpting away layers of doubt she thought would define her forever. But as night fell and fatigue took its toll, a daunting reality settled in her chest. The workshop would soon end, and she wouldn't have the steady cadence of peers and feedback to fuel her fire. Should she summon the courage to continue this narrative alone? The silence of her home seemed a mocking reminder that vulnerability could easily turn into isolation. Clutching her notebook, she thought of her intentions, these swift brushstrokes of emotion that needed to be colored in and refined. There was freedom to be found in that chaos, but also a fear that lingered. What if this path was too steep to ascend alone? Resolute, Mara decided to take the plunge. She would not let the thrill of creation fade after the final workshop. She needed a structure, a discipline that would keep the fire alive. What if she committed to penning a chapter a week, regardless of how daunting the task seemed? That would bridge her workshop insights into the world she faced every day, and give her a sense of accomplishment that transcended mere words on a page. With that thought, a new challenge loomed, electric and unnerving. How would she balance her budding writing ambitions with the demands of family, work, and life? Her heart raced at the notion embracing this commitment would be both liberating and complicated. As she closed her notebook that night, anticipation twisted with anxiety. The decision to step out from the comforting embrace of the workshop brought a new clarity, but also a weighty challenge. She had embraced her vulnerability, but could she sustain it? A breath hung in the air as she felt her gaze drift toward her laptop, which now felt less like a machine and more like the gateway to her future. Would her journey as a writer transform not only her stories but her entire existence? Sitting on the edge of her bed, Mara stared at the dawn light creeping beneath her blinds. It was the first day of her commitment, a chapter a week, and instead of excitement, dread curled in the pit of her stomach. The thought hung over her, suffocating in its intensity. How would she navigate this new terrain amid her responsibilities, family, and the unpredictability of life? There was always something that needed attention, and that day was no exception. As she prepared breakfast, the clatter of pots and pans shattered her thoughts. Her two children fought over the TV remote, their bickering gnawing at her concentration. Normally, she would have plunged herself into the chaos, but today she felt the weight of a promise she had made to herself. When she finally sat down with her coffee, Mara took a deep breath. She had resolved to carve out pockets of time for her writing, to prioritize this emerging identity as a writer. Later that day, she dropped the kids off at school and sat in her car, clutching her notebook. The blank pages mirrored the fluttering anxiety in her mind. With shaking hands, she hastily jotted down ideas, scenarios, conflicts. Each scribble stitched a thread of coherence to her chaotic aspirations. But then came the inner critic, That unmistakable voice, it draped itself over her like a heavy cloak, whispering that she could never produce something worthy. What if this commitment was foolish? What if she was setting herself up for failure? This nagging self-doubt resurfaced like an old friend, knocking loudly on the door of her resolve. Breathing deeply, she shook her head. No. She would confront that inner critic, just as she had crafted a villain in her story. With that, she drove home, sharper determination sparking beneath her skin. Sitting at her makeshift desk, she summoned the strength from her workshop experiences. She recognized the very tension she had felt as she weaved her protagonist's journey. The fear, the exhilaration, the confrontation between ambition and self-sabotage. It wasn't just fiction. It was her truth, one she was finally ready to own. With her fingers poised over the keyboard, she began the first chapter. Collaboration with the unknown loomed before her. The words trickled at first, hesitant and cautious like whispers in an echo chamber. But as she delved beyond that threshold, they surged forth. She envisioned her protagonist, a passionate artist grappling with the same fears that held Mara hostage. The character wept and bled ink across the pages, navigating through relationships and confronting the demons of self-doubt that chased her relentlessly. Hours slipped away in that dance of creation, and for the first time in years, Mara forgot about the world outside. She embraced the beautiful chaos inherent in the act of writing. Her characters morphed into guides, illuminating the darkest corners of her doubt. But after 3 hours of unbroken flow, a loud knock at the door pulled her from her reverie. It was her neighbor, asking if she could babysit due to an emergency. Just like that, her precious writing time was snatched away. Resentment bubbled up. Her hard-fought commitment seemed fragile, teetering like a stack of cards in the wind. As the afternoon light waned, Mara found herself sitting on the floor, notebook open but mind racing. Could she truly maintain momentum? Would the sacrifices she needed to make bleed into her relationships? Relief and anxiety tangled in her chest, each breath a battle between commitment and obligation. Finally, she made a decision. She would reclaim her time. Tonight, when the kids were asleep, she would write. That was the key, dedicating time when the world was quiet, when she could fully immerse herself in shaping her narrative. As she tucked her children into bed, whispers of fatigue washed over her. She tucked the uncertainty beneath her resolve, feeling both afraid and hopeful. With the clock ticking toward midnight, she stole moments to write. Would she finish the chapter she began today? Or would fresh doubts drown out her early promise? And what would her story become when she had to face the obstacles of family life amidst her ambitions? The night, sharp with possibilities, hung in the air, challenging her to leap into the abyss of creativity once more. Would she rise to meet it, or risk losing her tether in the process? The clock crept toward midnight, and the house lay wrapped in a fragile silence, interrupted only by the soft sound of her keyboard tapping beneath her fingers. Mara's heart raced. She could feel the rhythm of her story swelling within her, urging her to push beyond the constraints of doubt that had shadowed her for too long. But doubt persistently brushed against her like an unwelcome breeze, reminding her of the myriad distractions waiting just outside the door. With each keystroke, her protagonist's struggles flowed onto the screen, a mirror of her own conflicts. The character faced emotional landscapes, battling inner demons that Mara recognized all too well. Each moment of her character's journey felt like a lifeline, pulling her further from her mundane reality into a place where imagination could flourish. Yet, lurking beneath her fervor was a terrifying thought. Was she only exploring the depths of her discontent? She swallowed hard and debated whether she would have the strength to finish the chapter. Worry began to tease her, suggesting that this surge of inspiration would inevitably ebb. What if tomorrow brought with it the same chaos, the same interruptions? Would she become embroiled in the relentless cycle of family demands once more? But instead of caving into that despair, Mara dug deeper. She began to ask herself what her commitment truly meant. Delving into the heart of her protagonist's plight, she crafted scenes where the character was made to question societal expectations, pushing back against familial pressures with fierce resolve. Every word became a testament not only to her protagonist's journey, but also to Mara's own. An empowering realization washed over her. She was not simply a caregiver, she was a writer. And like her character, she was learning to fight for her voice. With renewed clarity, she paused for a moment to reflect on her own life. She had been running in circles, always putting her creative ambitions on the back burner, thinking she was being a good mother, a dutiful neighbor. But what legacy would she leave for her children if she didn't follow her dreams? It was a paradox. Her children relied on her, but wasn't the act of pursuing her passion also a lesson to them in resilient self-advocacy? The tapping of her fingers resumed with newfound urgency, her thoughts spilling forth like a long-dammed river. Suddenly her character's journey became a marvelously intertwined path with her own, each plot twist marking victories and setbacks that resonated deeply. She even smiled when she humorously exaggerated the stakes in her narrative, recognizing that the absurdities of her life mirrored her storytelling whims. She was laughing as she wrote, which was something she hadn't done in a long time. But just as inspiration flooded through her veins, the moment shattered. The soft patter of small feet disrupted the rhythm of her words. Her youngest stood at the threshold of her makeshift office, with bleary eyes and a confused expression. "Mommy?" The innocent question pulled at Mara's heart with serrated edges of guilt. With her mind still racing from the creative chase, Mara wrestled with emotions. Did she ignore her child to prioritize her writing? Her fingers paused mid-stroke, hovering above the keys as she weighed her conflicting identities. Even in this moment of maternal responsibility, the inner critic whispered, undermining her resolve. Could she truly hold fast to her commitment without sacrificing her role as a mother? Taking a breath, she put aside her fears. She enveloped her child in a warm embrace, feeling the delicate balance of her dual existence hanging in the air like the songs of 1,000 unsung dreams. But the internal struggle had just begun. After tucking her child back to bed, would she find the same passion to write again? Or would the lingering threads of hesitation intertwine with her intentions? Mara took the time for one last glance at her notes before she retired for the night, curious about the new layering of thoughts that this evening had brought. How would these realizations propel her character forward? And more importantly, would they push her to commit even deeper to her own narrative? The question hung in the air, a fragile tether leading into the unknown. What would tomorrow bring, a renaissance of creativity or a return to self-doubt? The endless possibilities awaited her. Mara awoke with a renewed sense of purpose as the sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating her cluttered life and the journey she embarked on. The first draft of her book was taking shape, and the words flowed with an authenticity that resonated not only with her, but with her deepest aspirations. Each paragraph felt like a stepping stone leading her toward a sense of accomplishment she had craved for years. Stepping into the kitchen, she spotted her children already engaged in their morning rituals, laughter echoing throughout the room. It struck her that they had witnessed her transformation over the past few months. She no longer felt like a mere caretaker juggling responsibilities. She was an artist forging her path. Instead of splitting her identity, she had woven her roles together, and it invigorated her. As she prepared breakfast, it dawned on her that her children, in their innocence, had become a source of inspiration. Their laughter and creativity fueled her resolve to persevere, and in turn, she had begun to embody the very tenacity she wanted them to see in themselves. Embracing the duality of being both a mother and a writer was no longer a battle. It had morphed into a cohesive narrative that was uniquely hers. Moments later, as they sat at the dining table, she took a leap and shared her writing journey with her kids. "I'm writing a book about a woman who faces challenges while chasing her dreams, just like I do," she said, her heart swelling with pride as she watched their eyes widen with curiosity. "Is she going to be okay, Mom?" her daughter asked, genuine concern etched across her young face. "She's going to be amazing," Mara assured. "Just like I will be, because I'm not giving up on my dreams." The palpable sense of mutual understanding between them sparked a warmth that solidified Mara's commitment to her work. The acceptance she sought for her ambitions was blossoming right at home. That afternoon, as she sat with her laptop in her favorite corner of the living room, inspiration struck again. She began revising the first draft she'd created during the workshop, infusing it with the newfound clarity she had gained. Each edit was an affirmation of her journey, every word reinforcing her resolve. As days turned into weeks, Mara met her commitment of writing a chapter a week with dedication. She conscientiously drafted, edited, and refined her narrative while balancing the demands of motherhood. The deadlines had transformed from a source of anxiety into milestones she eagerly pursued. Each completed chapter became a badge of honor, tangible proof of her progress. One Saturday morning, Mara received an email that felt like a crescendo to her symphony of growth. Her publisher reached out, inviting her to discuss the potential of an exclusive book launch event, something she had dreamed of since this journey began. No longer did the thought of failure loom ominously. Instead, it invigorated her. She was ready as she prepared for the meeting weeks later. Anxious excitement coursed through her veins. She donned an outfit that mirrored her confidence and triumph. At the conference table, her publisher leaned in, intrigued as Mara passionately described not just her book, but the stories behind her writing, the evolution of her voice, and the powerful lessons learned along the way. "Your journey resonates beautifully," her publisher remarked, admiration sparkling in their eyes. "Readers will connect with your authenticity. We believe in this project." In that moment, sitting there, Mara felt the duality of her life coalescing into something extraordinary. The once fractured pieces of her identity as a writer and a mother had merged seamlessly into a compelling narrative of resilience and inspiration. She walked away from the meeting knowing that her work had not only been validated, it had been celebrated. Back home, she gathered her children for a family movie night. They sprawled on the couch, laughter enveloping them as she poured popcorn into bowls. They were the joy that anchored her ambition, and she had proven through her determination that dreams are worth pursuing. As the credits rolled and her children drifted into sleep, Mara reflected on her journey. The woman she once grappled with had evolved, conquering self-doubt and insecurity. Her voice thrived in the art of storytelling. She had found a balance that allowed her ambitions to intertwine beautifully with her love for her family. With new chapters awaiting her, both in her writing and in life, Mara was resolute. As she settled into bed, one thought circled her mind like a mantra. She had not just found her voice, she had made it heard. The horizon now glimmered with promise and purpose, illuminated by her commitment to herself. So, join Mara on this transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.